right before rotation and we lose all the F-block cards, Pokemon Live updated and gave us a brand new rotating format. And this was called Trainer Trials, with the condition being is that it is a singleton format, which means you can only play one of each card, barring basic energies, and you cannot play more than one Pokemon in the evolution line. So for example, like, if you have this Charmander, you can play like the 60 HP one, for example. But as someone who's always looking to exploit the format, I know that Eevee and EVEX are technically two different Pokemon who also evolve into two different Pokemon. So you do get to cheat of the rule a little bit with Flareon and Espeon here, which I think is a really big niche because it allows you to start. It allows you to have a higher likelihood of starting with either Eevee and being able to attack with Flareon a lot quicker. On top of this, I really wanted to use Espeon EX in this format because as I was looking through, it seems like our ability to search out evolution Pokemon is really rough. It comes down to random Pokemon search, such as Great Ball, Dusk Ball, and Drayton, and then a few cards you can search out evolutions like Capturing Aroma, Jacq, and Ultra Ball. But those are so limited that I figured running some form of devolution would be really strong. And Espeon's about as strong as it gets, as it doesn't even just put them into the hand, which is less relevant in a singleton of format because we don't have a lot of rare candy, but it puts them back in the deck. So they're going to have a way harder time searching them up. And so if you just manage to devo them down, they're going to have a really hard time forming a game plan around that. And so that's where my basis was, is I started with the Eevees, the Flareon, and the Espeon. Espeon requires a Psychic, a Grass, and a Dark. So, because we already played the Fire Energies for the Flareon, and we have to have a Psychic just to even use the first attack, it makes sense to put Dragapult in as an alternative attacker, and Charizard EX as well, since that falls into the same bank. Other than that, I am playing a couple of copies of Dark Energy as well, which can charge up part of Espeon's attack, and also onto Munkidori, giving us just a little bit more damage and able to take out Badoos and Cleffas and Smoochums and Elekins and all this other stuff. And then, I'm also playing Sparkling Crystal. This allows us to fulfill the Grass Energy cost of the Espeon. It shouldn't be the main game plan every game, but if it is, you'll need the Sparkling Crystal in order to activate Espeon's attack. Lastly, are a couple of the support Pokemon that we're running. We have a Rotom Lumineon to make use of our Forest Sealstone, a Fezandipiti because why not, a Mimikyu because we're already running the Psychic Energies to attack with, and then I'm also running a Pelipper line. And Pelipper is cool because it can search your deck or your discard for a supporter and play it. So if you're late in the game, it'll allow you to refetch back a Roxanne or Iono to further shut down the opponent, or if it's in the early game, you can use it to grab an actual, viable supporter out of your deck. And because everything is so limited, I think Pelipper is a really nice addition for some of these decks. Otherwise, the only kind of other funny cards to talk about is the Chantel. I figured because what I've seen so far from playing the deck is that we have, a wide array of attackers to choose from. Some attackers are going to be better in other situations depending on what's in the front. So let's say you have a Dragapult, but the Pokemon in front of you has a lot of HP. The Chantel gives you the option to either A, switch out, which can swap you out into like a Charizard, for example, and do even more damage, or it acts as a boss's orders on the other side of the coin flip, and you would appreciate the boss's orders because it allows you to pick a better target for the Dragapult attack. So I think the Chantel is really viable here compared to like something like a Pokemon Capture or a Lycia's Appeal, which I've also seen in this slot. Otherwise, it's about as standard of a list as it gets. The only other card I could maybe talk about cutting is like the Ciphermaniac's code breaking, but I think it's fine. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment down below, and subscribe. And I will be seeing you guys in Journey together real soon. So it's really nice to have the option to get past the Mimikyu with the Drakloak. And, just in general, having the extra draw power in a format that's not very consistent. I put it reveals the Miraidon, which is actually like a kind of really neat card in this format because it can allow you to just search out a multitude of different types of attackers. And we even see the Regieleki VMAX, which is definitely a little bit of a favorite card of mine. And we are going to see the Switchy Bolt go ahead not knock me out, but put some damage on my Dragapult. One card I was really considering is I think there's a huge reliance on things like Rotom, Lumineon, or Ringroo in this format. And so I think Spiritomb ends up being a extremely strong card if you have that available to you. Should have probably looked at this in the future, but I think Spiritomb can be really, really strong in some of these decks. It kind of depends on like the angle you want to go for. But I think if you're playing like Era's Hero version of any deck, Spiritomb should be an auto-include, just because it's able to turn off all your opponent's abilities and stop them from getting ahead. That said, it's not really doing anything right now, as Regieleki V doesn't have any abilities, but still a consideration. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm thinking about the Miraidon deck I played with Klefki and Regieleki, where the whole point was you put like Cleansing Gloves and Zapdos down, so Regieleki's Switchy Bolt would do 70 damage to Ralts and to Comfies. You swap it to Klefki and you block down a bunch of their abilities and be super annoying. And so, that's why I'm thinking about that. But they did give us the Beach Court, which is going to allow us to at least take through a bunch of stuff here. And I'm staying on the Collapse Stadium too, which is actually something I'm very thankful about, because it can allow me to bump off this Rotom if I ever get the chance to. I'm also missing a bunch of stuff. So on top of the Drakloak being prized, it seems like my Rare Candy is prized as well. So this Dreepy is just not doing anything for the time being, which does suck. It's not super great, but I can go ahead, pull the energies onto my Charizard, and attack with a Flareon, get that set up possibly. I also have to consider whether or not I want to pull the trigger on this for a Sealstone, but I can't think of anything that I want to grab, though PAF seems to disagree. Never mind, we're just switching. And I'm probably just going to go ahead and put a Fire Energy onto the Dreepy here. I do wish that Flareon could spread the energies around, but, it's still a pretty good card. I think, even if you don't run the Espeon package, the Flareon stuff is still not that bad, because it's an early game attacker that can put energies on the Dragapult, for example. And instead of, that, maybe you just run, Radiant Charizard as an alternative attacker, because then you'd still only be running, Fire and Psychic energies. You can alternatively also run Jolteon in the back, as he's a cheap option that can maybe attack. And then, who else? I guess, Leafeon's also technically an option. Maybe not really. I was thinking because of the grass and water, but we don't really have much of a reason to run those unless we wanted to run Already Greninja. I do think Flareon's a really cool card to have in this format, kind of the same way that Arceus V-Star would be, because it gives you an early game start that isn't overwhelming, which is nice to have a Pokemon that's relatively balanced. But it's nice to have an option that isn't that one isn't broken. But two, also just allows you to charge up a multitude of strategies and really mix and blend stuff together, which, is kind of the key factor in this format, is that you're not going to get away with running a singular attacker, so your strategy either has to be flexible or cohesive. And so, Flareon definitely fits more into the flexible strategy, being able to, give you a bunch of options. And now we kind of have a dream setup going on. I'd like my opponent to bump the stadium at some point, since I don't have any way of getting into the Collapse Stadium, but it's probably fine. The only thing else I'd want to put down probably is maybe, do I even need the Espeon on this matchup? Not really. I guess I just want Fezandipiti up. That's kind of the only thing I can think about. And I do have this Pelipper on lockdown, give me a potential option down the line. I'm going to go ahead and take the prize on Magnemite. I'd much rather not have it be available later and just reset up another attacker when I'm not ready. And I'm trying to see what I might want here to go and what's it called? Yeah, I'm just looking to see what else I can do here. I do end up going for the boss's orders, and I think about harder shooting the Charizard, but they haven't taken any prizes yet. There's kind of no reason for me to do that. Also, in a previous turn, I attached a third energy to my Flareon, so I think in my head I really don't need this energy anywhere else. And so I want an extra energy on the Flareon, because it'll allow me to retreat and then attack later if I attach a Night Stretcher to it. That said, there's now a consideration that I should have attached to Pelipper, as I don't think I'm going to get the Espeon set up. I don't think Espeon's particularly great outside of the random hand sniping being kind of nice. And so now I'm in a situation, it's well, how do I get out of this? And the answer is, I really don't have a lot going for me in this situation. But, it's still not the worst. I could go ahead and Earthen Vessel away the Mimikyu, since it's kind of past the point where I think Mimikyu will be important for winning the game, and I can just go ahead and slowly charge it the Pelipper and then maybe swap out. If they attack this is fine, as I can just go ahead and return the knockout with a Flareon or a Charizard. Otherwise, I'll just retreat out next turn and then get the knockout anyways, so they're kind of in a lose-lose spot, because I'm not going to get a lot, except for an open bench spot, which I can then use to, put Fezandipiti down. I'm going to go ahead and go to the Flareon once again. I know he's a little bit damaged, he's a little bit vulnerable, like especially if the Regieleki evolved into the VMAX, it could go ahead and knock me out, but this is why I've been putting the damage on it all game with the Munkidori, because I think that Charizard can go ahead and take 3 prizes off of it if it does decide to evolve. And we do magically hit the Great Ball into the Fezandipiti. It was nice knowing that I had just put a bunch of cards at the bottom of the deck, so the Great Ball had a higher chance of hitting the Fez off of that, which is just kind of good knowledge to have. Alternatively, the Nest Ball is kind of okay, because if you just took a Pokemon off the prizes that you might want, you would know it's at the bottom of the deck with the Nest Ball you have in your hand. The only sad thing about Dust Ball is you can't search it out and then use it knowing that there's a card at the bottom of the deck, because if you search it out, like, your deck gets shuffled. My opponent is going to go ahead and evolve into the Regieleki and take the knockout against my Flareon, which is kind of exactly what I wanted, because of all the damage I put on it earlier, Charizard is going to be able to come in and take an easy 3 prizes. I can go ahead and do a bit more if I wanted to for PM, but we really didn't need a whole lot that game. Just a good, consistent setup and good lines. I think the Pelipper really bailed me out by putting some damage onto the Miraidon earlier, which allowed me to score a knockout, and then me putting chip damage onto the Regieleki throughout the match allowed me to just come in a Charizard and very easily take the 3 prizes I deserved. This is probably the sketchiest start I have, because I have a Fez in the active, and that's kind of one thing, is I feel like the Mulligan's are really uncontrollable. There's so many Pokemon that's like, oh, this would be really good if I started it. Like, as a spoiler for my next video, Okidogi is really strong if you start with it. But, there's more obvious and general answers you have, like, Rotom is good, Dreepy is good, Badu, Cleffa, all of these are very acceptable answers. What's also acceptable is, the fucking Arcanine over there using Stoke. And normally, like, you wouldn't give that card much credit. But because of the format that we're in, I think these attacks are really strong for getting you all set up. And because it's super self-sufficient, you can start charging something else up. Granted, I don't remember what Arcanine EX does. I know as an outrage attack, that's about it, but I don't remember if it actually does meaningful damage. But, I mean, I guess we'll have to see if they have it. One other thing I also noticed too is, like, with the Mulligans, it's really sketchy. You never know, like, what you're going to start with, what you're going to be able to go off with. So I think this is a good start for me. I really wanted to make sure I was getting an attacker down, but also drawing cards. So even though I hate to pull my Forest Steel Stone so early, I think in this case it was acceptable, because it allowed me to go ahead and, what's it called? Get my draw and my stuff set up. And now I can actually go ahead and Rare Candy into, what's his name? I could go ahead and Rare Candy into Dragapult this turn and start swinging. I did go ahead and pull the Jacq, which I'm not sure was the absolute correct play. I was saying the Rare Candy. I think I should have maybe grabbed a switch off the Forest Seals. Oh no, I used the Forest Seals. I'm stupid. I was like, what am I missing here? But yeah, I had to do it like this. For some reason, in my head, I was thinking like, I just switch Terra Crystal, Touch and Energy onto the Drakloak and then swing for almost lethal. But the Flareon's good enough, right? It's a good enough bridge. We put some damage on the Charizard so it gets knocked out. I have Drakloak available for card draw, so we're just in a good spot here. And my opponent's going to go ahead and concede. So that's like my first taste of this format. I really think this format's really neat. And having the F-block cards adds just that little bit of extra consistency that I don't know would have existed in a post-rotation format. So it's nice that we got to play with this format right before everything was gone. It's a cool way to send off, a couple of these other cool cards. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to like, comment down below, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in Journey Together. Alrighty, and getting started with the first games here. I will say one thing I really like about this format is that it does make decks suboptimal, but they're not unplayable. And so I think there's still a lot of cohesive strategies, but unlike something with unlike GLC, you don't have a restriction on like the game plans and the ways that you want to play, and so it's really up to you to make the best of what you have available to you. And that's why I really like is that we get to tie together a lot of like neat packages together. So like here, I get to use the Flareon to put energies on the buff Dragapult and onto Munkidori. But Charizard can also do the same thing by attaching energy to Dragapult. There's a lot of blending between the ideas that we have here. I think it's really cool. And you also get to play like a few things that you wouldn't normally see. I do think it sucks because there's still like one strategy that gets left out, and that's like the how do you describe them? Like you gotta have multiple of the same Pokemon and play type of strategies. So those ones still get left out. But I like having the deck builder restriction, but not the type restriction that you see in GLC. And even just like the rule boxes don't really affect me at all. Because I think the fact that like the rule boxes are still powerful, but you only get to play one of them in each deck, really allows you to just like hammer in how strong and unique every single one of your pieces are. Where like in GLC, for example, you might be playing a card that isn't very impactful, but you kind of have to run it because it's the best thing that you got. Like I know Fire has a lot of those where like you're running the card not necessarily because it's good, but because it's the only thing you have available to you, and like that doesn't feel good to me. I don't want to be playing cards that don't feel good. I want to, play cards that, for the most part, are pretty decent, if not just outclassed. Like it's kind of telling. Something with like the worst you get is like Great Ball and Dusk Ball. They're both kind of unreliable options, but because all your Pokemon are unique and your deck is already a Highlander version, it's kind of nice to just have the extra additional Ball Search. And so even though it's a weaker tier Ball Search, it forces you to level your priorities on which resources you want to use. So if you're looking for a specific Pokemon, your Nest Ball and your Ultra Ball have a lot of high value. Well, in the mid game, it's like, okay, well, I got this like Great Ball, which can maybe fetch me something important, like maybe if I was going to Fez or a different game plan. And so I think having that level of adaptability and flexibility inside of the standard format really helps to make games feel unique. Anyways. I do think there's one kind of solid thing about this specific block is that we do have the combination of Rotom, Oranguru, and Lumineon, who are just like cornerstone pieces because it means your Arven is really good. And any sort of tool search that you include is also really nice. So the Renguru's really good for finding your Forest Seal Stone, but you also got Town Store, Arven. Even Colress can fetch you a Town Store. So you have a lot of options of game these tools, and the tools can help you assemble the majority of your game plan, whether this is using TM Evolution or TM Turbo Energize or grabbing Forest Seal Stone. So I think there's so many like nice things about this specific block of cards that we have currently that we're about to lose. And I don't know how this format will feel when it comes back to us, but I can say that I really enjoy this version of it. I enjoy it more than the current standard format. But, what am I to say? I've only been playing this for about, 2 hours. There is a Crispin in my opponent's deck, which is a card that I should probably consider my own list. It can allow me to more easily attach to, a Munkidori while still getting my Dragapult, my Flareon attachment in, which I think is valuable. I just didn't know what card I wanted to specifically cut. I think I mentioned it earlier, but the Ciphermaniac is probably on the table for cuts. I kind of like the Ciphermaniac because it puts a card on top of the deck for the next turn, or it can also be used to draw with Dragapult, for example. So I think there's some important niches to it. My opponent puts down a Lively Stadium, which is currently doing my opponent 0 favors and me a little bit, because it is preventing the Eevee from being a target to get knocked out from Munkidori damage or even the Frostlass coming down. So that's appreciated. I'm trying to figure out what else I might want. I'm contemplating grabbing a supporter for next turn, such as a Jacq. And I am going to go ahead and do that because I think Jacq into Charizard can be decently strong, but also I really want to evolve my Eevee that's on the bench and prevent it from being fodder. The Eevee can also evolve into Espeon, and if Espeon comes online, I can shut down the Hydreigon before it becomes a problem, which I think is really nice. As we have very limited gusted options, I think it's important to be able to, shut down the Hydreigon. And on top of that, if I can also turn off the Frostlass too, I can turn off my opponent's own source of damage, because they want to have the Frostlass up to put damage on their own Pokemon, so they can use Munkidori to move around and possibly find a KO somewhere. but I really don't want that. So if I could put both that and the Hydreigon or the Zweilous into the deck, I think I'm in a good spot. I put it against Atticus off the Pokegear, which I don't think is that strong. I was playing a Poison deck, which will be either uploaded later today or tomorrow around 12 hours from when this video should be going up. And so, I do think that Poison's really strong, but Atticus just isn't there because there are two reliable Poison setups, or one on a stage 1 and 2 on a Pokemon who requires way more support before Atticus even becomes remotely usable. And by the time you get the Brute Bonnet set up and put an Ancient Capsule on it, you're probably in a good spot. I'm going to be able to get the attack here with the Espeon, and I am going to go ahead and just take the chance to devolve this Zweilous and put it back into the deck. My opponent has a lot of cards in hand, but they haven't really shown to do anything productive. I mean, they haven't evolved up into Hydreigon yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and, was it Amazas? Something like that, and put this Zweilous back in. This is definitely a passive play, but I don't think the random hand snipe from my opponent is going to do super hot. And so I'd rather play like an Iono next turn and then hand snipe them and at least trim down their options, which is where I'm trying to go with this. Unfortunately, my Espeon that's in the active does have an Eevee underneath it, which can become relevant later, as I've taken 50 damage, and so if they bump the Stadium, which, is a possibility, and then they play a Devolution, I can lose my Espeon here, which is one of my, main win conditions at this point, as I'm turning my opponent's hand down. I did get rid of the Feather Ball, which I don't think is that relevant, and grab Mew EX and grab Pidgeot EX, but otherwise, I don't have the Pidgeot readily available. I also do Iono them into the Zweilous, which means that I'm probably going to have to consider using Amazas again. And then, if they also get the Iono me back, which is, completely valid and fair, understandable. But as I was trying to say, if they do end up playing the Frostlass here, it's really nice that you can shuffle multiple Pokemon back in the deck, because they're making them waste a lot of value. They're also going to go ahead and Radiant Greninja, which is very slightly concerning, because if they ever now bump the Stadium, I can lose quite a few Pokemon in play now. I'll top this Frostlass, putting extra damage onto everything. I'm going to go ahead and play the Heavy Ball, because I now have the Dreepy in there, and that'd be nice to have access to just in case. I'm considering just sniping my opponent's hand here, seeing as their hand size is very low, but just in case they have the Hydreigon, I do think I could lose to that, so I'd much rather just put the Frostlass and the Zweilous back in. It stops them from putting damage on their own side of the field, which makes their Munkidori a lot worse first off. And then it also, stops them from going to Hydreigon. They could still rare Candy, but with how little cards they have in their hand, I think I'm in a good spot. Otherwise, they're going to go ahead and try to search out some stuff. It seems like their deck is empty. I really don't know what's going on here. They might just be dumping their hand to try to get more value out of a Cleffa. And then they go for a TM Devolution, which, is also kind of scary, because it does mean I'm going to lose my Espeon. I was hoping to ride the majority of the game out on the Espeon here, because it snipes cards out of my opponent's hand and can reduce that. But I do have Espeon still. I just realized now is that I can just evolve back in Espeon because they use Devolution. So I can still go for my main game plan of just being stupid. And I also realized that in this game I was being stupid because I ended up using Switch to go back out to the Espeon anyways. If I thought a little bit harder about how I was just going to have all my Pokemon, or have the energies available anyways, I should have just gone straight into Eevee, but, it made dumb mistakes. I'm sure losing the Switch won't be too detrimental, as my opponent doesn't have a lot of cards in hand currently, and they've just played their counter catcher. I knocked the DTE off, which I'm not sure is too relevant. I'm not sure what in that deck would be attacking a DTE, besides Pidgeot, I guess. But it does mean that Blood Moon or something can't attack. I don't know. Regardless, my opponent's going to pull out the Biny Mochi. So, my opponent's definitely playing some weird stuff here. It does seem like they're getting ready to attack with Munkidori, which is also really sketchy. This is a situation where I would like to have my Switch, because my Switch would have allowed me to swap out without losing energy here, which means I'll have to find a Night Stretcher or Super Rod and get all that stuff back, and yeah, it's not super fun. But killing the Munkidori is still positive, and they have not evolved their Dino. I will say one other thing too is they're really like reading out the Cleffa here. I feel like they should just attack with Cleffa way earlier, because now I feel like they're just making a bunch of suboptimal plays. I contemplate whether or not I want to grab, Roxanne or Boston Orders. I decided to hold on to the Roxanne because I feel like my opponent's really out of options now, so they're gonna have to Cleffa soon, and the Roxanne could be really good at pulling their hand down. That's it. If they do Cleffa, I just win the game. So there's really not much else to say. The Roxanne would also draw me into a brand new hand, so in case they like counter captured something and I was stuck, then I'd have a high chance of getting it out. But they end up forfeiting, as they can't really do much there. And we move on to the next game. So Espeon really came in clutch for that match there, which Espeon's a good card. I don't know what else to say. We are going to be seeing some more work happen right here. Nothing too exciting here. I do have to question whether or not I want to grab the Wingull or the Charmander or the Eevee. I should be looking at the rest of my deck and seeing like what I can evolve into, because if the Charizard isn't there or the Charmeleon or whatever, then I'm really missing out. And one thing that I think I miss on this first inspection is I don't have a Drakloak in the deck, which sucks because Drakloak's like a decent option because it draws me cards and it's really easy to power up too. It can allow me to get past like a Mimikyu, for example. So it's really nice